Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my July reading wrap up for you. I had big designs, big plans in July with the hope that July would get me out of my reading slump, and it did for the first couple of weeks, and then I crashed and burned again. So it's an interesting mix of books that I actually completed and a fair number of books I didn't even pick up, a couple of books I wasn't planning on reading that I ended up picking up that I really loved, and so yeah, a big old mix of books that I ended up reading in July, including maybe the best book I've read so far this year. That is coming. So, as far as my 1001 book countdown, if you're not familiar with the 1001 book countdown, I'll leave a card up here for you where you can go and check out the original video. But I'm reading books off of the 1001 books you must read before you die list, and just slowly making my way through that particular project. At the end of June, I was at 871 and 33. 33 meaning every year at the beginning of the year, I pre-select 52 books and try and focus on those with the intent of getting that number to 0, and haven't made it any year yet. And this month did not help those numbers because as of right now, I don't have a 1001 countdown video that I actually posted in July, which means those numbers aren't changing. That's where I'm at for the month of July. I mean, I will have a countdown video this weekend, so I know that there'll be a couple of books on that, but I just didn't make a lot of progress. I have a huge pile of books over here. You can see them right here, over here somewhere on my bookshelf, that I would like to get to in August, September timeframe, but I don't know. So I am not putting a lot of pressure on myself, though. I'm trying not to. The two books that I did end up finishing that I will talk about in my countdown video this weekend are A Room with a View by E.M. Forster, and the second one is actually Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which was a reread for me, but I ended up really liking this book quite a bit in the reread. There was a lot I forgot about this book, and I'm very happy that I read it. This is for the 1001 book club. But yeah, Jane Eyre were the two books I ended up actually finishing. Now, I have a number of projects, of course. The first project I'm going to talk about is my Discover New Author project. I actually had two books on this for the month of July, one being The Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. I had this as a buddy read. My buddy reader ended up really not getting along with the book and DNFing it, which was completely fine. I absolutely respect and understand that decision. I made it about this far, about a third of the way through, and then decided, you know what, I just don't want to read it right now, and put it aside. So I will try and pick it back up in 2023 when, I don't know, but it wasn't one that I was successful reading this month. It's really too bad because I was looking forward to this one quite a bit and it just didn't happen. That I was successful about for the Discover New Authors, though, ended up being this one, Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. This book also qualifies for the Big Book Summer Challenge hosted by Sue Jackson. And I read this with Sarah from Freshly Read Books, Fraser Simon from Springboard Thought, Jill at the Book Bully, and Gemma from Gem of Books. Took me a moment, sorry about that. We read this book in July, and this book is just a heck of a lot of fun. It is an epic space opera, from what I understand. That's the right terminology. I don't read a lot of sci-fi. I definitely don't read a lot of space operas either, so I don't have a big point of reference in this one. But there was so much to like about this. It's really told from two characters' perspectives for the most part. Miller and Holden, I think those are those names. Don't quote me on that. And it really, at some point, their stories come together, and it was just a lot of fun. We are going to continue this series and read the next book in October, mainly because I'm gone in August and then busy in September, and so we said October will be when we pick up book 2. If you're looking for a really fun introduction to a space opera, I would say this one is very, very readable, understandable. The end is a little confusing, but lots of great characters to root for, lots of interesting stuff going on, and it would be a highly recommended one. My other project is my subscriber favorites project, and I had selected this book, The Fortnight in September by R.C. Sherriff. Didn't even open it. Didn't even happen. I really had great intentions to read this, but this is part of my crash and burn at the end of the month. I just didn't get to it. It will be one of the few books I'm carrying over into August with the hope of reading it in August for my anti-TBR month. But I don't know, because I'm still playing it by ear. It's only August 2nd at the point that I'm recording this video, so I haven't decided yet exactly what I'll be reading. It's very loosey-goosey for August. My other book, The Wellness Trap, which was part of my Health and Body series, I read the first part of it and then put it aside and just said I'll pick it up later. It wasn't, again, a book that was really impactful for me at that moment. I think there's a lot of great information in it, but I really need to come back to it. The Up to No Good Book Club, which has Fraser Simon, Shelley Swearingen, Jolene at Bookworm Adventure Girl, and our subscribers Deb, Sonia, and Angela. The book was Witch King by Martha Wells, a fairly new release. I have read one book in the Murderbot series and did really like that. I read the first 10-15 pages of this book several times and didn't quite gel with it as well. And again, it goes back to kind of the second half of the month and really not feeling a lot of reading. That made me struggle. And I just didn't get through this one either. That's 3 or 4 books I didn't make it through. I know. I don't know what is going on with my reading right now, but I am enjoying having a more relaxed kind of reading schedule and not putting so much pressure on myself to try and finish these books just because I had them on my list, whether they were on the 1001 books or not. So I think that part's really healthy. I also think my August break is really healthy. But what did I actually end up reading in the month of what did I actually end up reading in the month of July, though? I mean, I've shown a few books, but not that much. I will talk about my favorite book of the year last, just to keep you hanging around, maybe. I ended up also reading, though, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I read this with Heidi at My Reading Life and my friend Sonia, and this book was really an interesting book. It is the Pulitzer Prize winning novel. It is the Women's Prize winning novel this year, and I can see why it would get all of that high acclaim and praise. It is, the main character whose name is actually Damon, but he ends up being called Demon, and Copperhead being his nickname. There are a lot of parallels, apparently, to David Copperfield. I haven't actually read David Copperfield, so I can't speak to all of those. But Demon has a very rough beginning in life. He's just, oh, poor Demon. There were so many times in this book that I just really wanted to give him a hug. I will say that for me, the writing style in the beginning was a little bit in my face. I felt like he was talking at me a lot. It is told through Damon's voice, and there was a lot to it that was just like a little bit off-putting for me in the beginning. There's a lot of drug use, a lot of really bad stuff that happens in this book, and he is a very complicated character, and I just wanted someone to be in his corner, and it was so hard to read, but so good. So thank you to Heidi and Sonia for reading this with me. I finally got to it. It also qualifies for the Big Book Summer Challenge by Sue Jackson, because I believe it was over 500 pages. Yes, it's over 500 pages. That's another book off of that TBR. So Demon Copperhead, that was a very successful read. It wasn't quite the 5-star read I wanted it to be, but it was very, very good. I also, for the TBR Tackle in June, which is hosted by Sarah at Freshly Read Books and Jill at The Book Bully, prompt was to pick a book with more than 5 or 6 words in the title, I think is what the prompt was, and I ended up picking up this one, Now Is Not the Time to Panic by Kevin Wilson, the author of Nothing to See Here, which I have actually not read. This book has a couple main characters who make a poster that they just start posting all over town, and then people are in a panic over what this poster is and what does it mean and all of these different things, and it becomes a very big thing. The book was okay. It wasn't my favorite. I've heard really great things about Nothing to See Here. I actually have it on my shelf, so I'm hoping to be able to read this one. I'm happy that it was finished. It wasn't a very big book. I read this towards the beginning of the month as well, and the details are already starting to kind of escape me, but I did finish Now Is Not the Time to Panic. The next 2 books I have are books that were not on my TBR, and I ended up getting them from the library. The first one being this one, The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. This book is a sequel to The Soulmate Equation. And so you don't necessarily have to read the first book in order to read this one. I actually haven't read the first book. I think I've read part of it, but not all of it. This is a contemporary romance novel starring a character who is a romance novelist and a TV producer who wants her to go on a reality reality TV show. And she really kind of turns it on its head and says, I want all of the male contestants to be a traditional romance trope character. So the cowboy or the nerdy guy or the rich guy or all of these different pieces in it. And it is a fun romance. On the spicy level, it does have some explicit sex scenes in it, but not as many as some other novels that I have read. But it was a lot of fun. In the end, it's just really, really sweet and was very warm and comforting. And was it formulaic? Not really. I mean, it was kind of, but it was a fun story. It was a little bit different because she's on this reality show and she's meeting all these men and going on all these dates at the same time as working with this producer. And it is a lot of fun. Very, very sweet book. One, I think if you're looking for just a fun summer romance kind of novel, I would say, yeah, pick this one up. I think it would be great. And now my favorite book, and maybe my favorite book that I have read all year. I don't have a physical copy of it because it was a library book that I held on to for almost a month and then read it over a 2-day period. I don't know what I was thinking, why I didn't read it earlier, but the book is The Collected Regrets of Clover. I will put a book cover up here for you so you can see it. The book is about a woman who has experienced some significant loss in her life with her parents and her grandfather, and she ends up being a death doula. Now, I wasn't familiar with what a death doula was, but it is basically someone who goes and sits with people in their last days to comfort them. Maybe people who don't have family or who have family who don't want to talk about the upcoming potential death of this beloved person. And it was so amazing, this character. I just wanted to sit and sit with this book and love this book and read this book. I was so sorry it was over. It was heartwarming. It was heartbreaking. It 100% made me cry. It made me not want to go out to dinner with my husband because I was sitting there trying to finish it. And he's like, we gotta go, time to go to dinner. We were out of town at the time. And I just did not want to put this magnificent book down. It is not a formulaic kind of story. There are some twists and turns to it, but there are so many really vibrant characters in it, including Clover herself. If you have recently lost someone or there is a lot of conversation about grief, about processing grief, about how healing isn't the same for everyone. Someone may take a very long time. Someone may be able to process it faster, and how all of those forms of processing grief are acceptable and normal. And it was just something that I really wanted to read. I thought that this book was what was going to break me out of my slump for the whole month. And it did for like 2 weeks. I was so excited about reading, excited to pick up a book, and I just absolutely loved it. I need to go buy this book now because I continue to think about this book. I definitely want to reread it at some point. It's been a long time since I've had a book that I have loved this much, and I really, really, really liked it. Yeah, it was amazing. The last book that I'm going to talk about, I also don't have, which is As Long as the Lemon Tree Grows. I read this as a buddy read, and this book was also excellent, absolutely excellent book. The Collective Regrets of Clover for me edged it out a bit as far as like my favorite book, but this book is set in war-torn Syria with a young girl who is working in a hospital supposedly as a pharmacy student, but then gets drafted to help with all of the patients that are flooding in this war-torn zone. And there's a lot of discussion about getting out, about mental health, about trauma, and it is really, really tough to read. There are some twists and turns in it. One, I kind of knew what it was. The other one, not at all. I didn't see it coming, and I was shocked by it. And in this part, there's always this decision of, do they leave Syria? Do they not leave Syria? Do they become refugees on this sketchy boat to get out of the country? Do they stay and take their chances? And it is very, very well done. It is another book I would absolutely recommend, but its content is difficult. Very, very difficult book. that is what I ended up reading. I mean, if I had only read The Collective Regrets of Clover, I would have considered this a successful reading month because that book was so amazing and I still think about it. So what was your favorite book that you read in the month of July? I would love to hear that. Have you read The Collective Regrets of Clover? I would love to hear that as well. I already recommended it to a friend who has already read it and she said the same thing. It's probably one of the best books she's read this year. I am very stingy with like my 5-star reviews. I don't know if it's because I'm overly picky, but this one was a 5-star plus for me. I absolutely loved every minute of reading The Collective Regrets of Clover. That was by far my favorite book. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.